I thought he had, okay.
So
Maybe wait just a second then, sorry.
I'll
It was
take a
Randy
second.
when he popped up, I thought, having one of those days.
It takes a second for everything to begin recording and streaming. So
Yeah, he texted me back trying as well.
Hey, Jess, do you need me to get with you to sign like last month's meetings and this month's meetings?
Yes, I was gonna have you. I was thinking hopefully by next month we'll be a regular meeting, but if we're not, maybe just meeting somewhere and just having you sign.
Okay.
well, it started rolling, so you can begin the meeting, I guess, and we'll just let him in. If
Can you give him a call, Steve?
yeah, but text me his phone number. We don't give it to the world.
I'm resending him the link.
Okay.
Maybe.
Oh, there he is. Oh, there's the mayor.
That's a good looking picture there.
I just sent you, Steve, his number, so.
So should we start or wait another
Yeah,
sec?
and we'll get him on.
Okay.
Steve is good at that.
Okay. Welcome to the June Power Board meeting. Sorry, I look over to see my agendas there to the side. We are again remote and on Zoom and YouTube again this year or this month. Thanks everybody for taking time and being here. Thanks if there's anybody in the room watching also. Do we need, I guess we need to wait a minute if we're going to approve agenda and minutes, till he gets on.
I think you have a quorum with 3, so.
Can we go with the 3 then? Okay, well then, can we, has everyone had a chance to look at the agenda? Any questions?
The agenda or the minutes from last meeting?
Well, we've got to do the agenda first
Okay.
before we can do the minutes, because the minutes are on the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Okay,
I'll
so we
second
have
it.
a first from Randy and a second from Todd. Todd, go ahead and start us.
Spriggs,
vote.
aye.
Meyer, aye.
Dinsmore, aye. And we don't have Harold yet, so he's still trying. So, okay. Item 2 is the approval for the minutes for May 5th. Did everyone have a chance to look through those? Are there any questions?
I'll go ahead and motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, so Todd has made a motion to,
I'll second that.
and Randy has seconded. So go ahead, Todd, and if you want to start us.
Spriggs, aye.
Meyer, aye.
And Dinsmore, aye. Oh, look, we have a live mayor now. Yeah, you got. What's that? Harold, are you with us now? You're on mute right now.
How's that?
There you are. Okay, so we've got everybody. To catch you up, Harold, we just started and we've approved the agenda in the minutes. So
That's an I for me.
that's where we're at right there. So
Okay.
actually, let's just real quick. Did you have any questions on the minutes?
No, I did not. I was going to address something, but I'll wait for Rick to get into it because he may get to what I was going to ask about. So.
Okay. All right. As long as there's nothing that we need to look there. So, okay, minutes. Okay, on to regular business. Kimberly, our financial report for today.
Thank you. It's great to be, I couldn't say that for you since we're not there and present, but to be able to come and give you a little bit of a financial update as we're getting ready to wrap up the fiscal year. There's just a couple things that I wanted to put in front of you so that you can review it. I like to use our financial dashboard so you can just see some of the data as we talk about it really quickly. So I'm just going to do a screen share real quick here. Jessica, is that something I can do? It says it's disabled. If we can't, that's fine. I can work around that.
It should be on the bottom of the screen. So if that doesn't work, I don't know.
Okay, yeah, it just says that it's been disabled, so I can't. So that's okay. We'll move forward. You don't need to see anything. You probably don't care anyway. Just envision, you know, some nice charts and graphs to go along. But so our current budget that we have in the power department is $18,059,134. And year to date through May, we are currently at, on our revenue, $14,436,680. And on our expenses, $14,536,000. So it's about, we're about 80% for the year in terms of our revenue and our expenses. And let's see, I've just given the okay to try sharing now. So I'll give you.
Got it. Looks great.
Okay. So we'll kind of throw that up there for you. Let's see. Okay, so for the power department in particular, just to point out is we don't really anticipate seeing much change as a result of the COVID-19 that has taken place from a financial impact there, with the exception of what we'll consider our aging balances when we get towards the end of this year. So historically, the power department has had about 7% of the revenues that hang out there in our accounts receivable. And if it's greater than that, then we tend to write it off because we recognize that about 7%, that's what is out there that we'll still collect. And right now, when I went and looked at that, we're running a little bit higher. We're running at about 10%. So we're up about 3%. And that is going to be specifically related to the fact that we haven't done any shutoffs for non-pay for the last 2 months. I believe this month in June, that is something that they're planning on happening. Now, we do anticipate that overall, we probably will have a slightly higher uncollectible account scenario that's as a result of that. But the city is offering payment plans for up to 6 months for people to be able to get caught up on their bills because of this situation. I did reach out to our city treasurer, and he said at the time, we currently don't have anybody who has started a payment plan. But the shutoffs for non-pay that'll start up again in June will probably trigger that to start happening. Our goal obviously is to not impact our residents, you know, during this time as much as possible, but we also still have to be mindful of juggling that balance of not getting too far behind where people, you know, it makes it even harder kind of for them to be able to catch up on that. So I think our revenues though are actually on target as well as our expenses. So when we come in, I'm gonna jump over here and switch this to look at our operating revenue and expenses for the department. Okay. If we look at our operating revenue and we strip out all of our capital outlay, then from a variance standpoint, we're still doing fairly well. We have right now our expenses are in excess of our revenues, but that's because of the large capital projects that we had this year with the reconstruction of this daily substation. We planned on using about $1.8 million of prior year savings in order to fund that project. At year end, I do anticipate we won't have to use quite that much in reserves because our impact fee collections have been up this year because despite what's been happening, growth is not something that has slowed down for Washington City in regards to that. Obviously, the Staley sub is only partially impact fee eligible, but I do anticipate that we won't have to quite use as much money as we'd originally thought from our savings for that project this year. Even though June will be the last month of the fiscal year, we still have 2 months worth of billing that we will collect on, and May's billing that just went out, and then the June billing, we'll still have usage that we will collect on that into August. And then from the expense standpoint, our UAMPS billing, which makes up the largest portion of our budget, that billing cycle runs about 2 months behind. And so we won't know until about the end of August where those final expenses come in. But at this point, I am not anticipating much variance at all from the current budget. I don't expect expenses to be over, and I don't expect, if anything, I do expect our revenues might come in slightly higher. Rick had also pointed out that with the high heat that we have, we are, the usage for May was significantly higher than last year's May because people have got their air conditioners running. And so with that coming into play and the heat rising sooner, these last 2 months from a revenue collection will probably be a little higher than we anticipated. Let's see.
Kimberly,
Yes.
just one other comment on that, on the UAMPS costs. So far, they've actually come in lower each month generally
Okay.
than what we'd anticipated. So I'm thinking that expense will actually be a little bit less. So that's good on both accounts.
That's great. So that again would factor into us, if our expenses come in under budget, then it frees up that revenue to go towards that project, and will reduce again the amount of money we have to pull from savings to finish that project off. So all in all, we do feel like that from a financial standpoint that everything is as we would like it to be within the power department. And we don't have really much impact, and the impact that we will see from these past due accounts will be quite minor. Just to put you into a little bit of perspective, Washington City's uncollectible accounts in terms of the dollar amount that we write off annually is the actual write-off portion. We don't write off accounts until they've been terminated for at least a year and we haven't been able to collect any payment for a year. At that point, it goes over to collections, and we still try to collect through a collection agency, but we write it off of our books. And Washington City's write-off balance is actually less than 1% that we do. And compared to the, what do you guys call it? The Government Power Association. I can't think all of a sudden off the top of my head what that's called. APPA, American Public Power. On average, public power systems actually write off about 20 cents on the dollar. And that's where the standard is. And Washington City, as you can see, is significantly lower than that. And a big portion of that has to do with the tight turnaround that we have and requirement for people to make payments timely on their accounts. So overall, we're in a good financial, situation for the city. Okay. And I think that was kind of all that I had to cover, unless anyone has any questions. And I apologize, somebody just printed to the printer in my office, and so that noise kind of came in and took over for a minute.
Kimberly, thank you for that. Excuse the ignorance here. The numbers you gave for revenue, that's not including obviously the non-payment, right? All the non-payment.
That would be correct. So one thing when we talk revenue on an enterprise fund that operates like a business, the revenue actually gets reported when the bills are issued. So it doesn't use cash accounting. And so what it does is once we bill it out, it reports as revenue, but then we have basically a receivable that's due that is offset for that. And so historically, our receivables are within 1 month of our billing. We don't generally have a large receivable balance that's out there. Ours is still relatively small. It still is only 7% of our overall revenue for the city. And but in terms of delinquent accounts, we might have, when we very first start up for the month, we might have about 300 accounts that we're waiting for some payments to roll in, and right now we're up to about 900.
Okay. So it has gone up.
It has gone
We
up,
have
but
announced.
still immaterial overall to the system.
Okay.
Is there any other questions?
None for me.
Okay. Well, we do have the next year's budget for 2021 that goes to City Council with a public hearing and review at the next council meeting on June 13th. That's next week. And then if we will have an amendment for the city budget for the current year on June 24th. It's yet to be determined whether there'll be any modifications to the power budget. But just to put that date out, if you're interested, there will be a public hearing June 24th to amend the current year city budget.
I think if we do anything, Kimberly, it'll be pretty minor.
Okay.
If at all.
So can you tell me again, the revenue that's uncollected for Washington City is less than 1%?
The write-off portion. So right now, we actually end up writing off each year is less than 1%, but our receivables that we run usually runs about, it's about 7% of what the total revenue comes in for the budget.
But industry standard, I know it's not called that, but
right. The industry standard is 20%. Yeah, 20 cents on every dollar that you bill out is what they typically write off.
So that's about 20. That's, yeah, significant. That's a lot lower.
And that's always one of the topics that comes up when we go out and issue debt and the bond ratings, and they're always pleased to see how tightly managed those receivables are. Okay, so if that's it, then I'll just probably come back before you. It won't be, my guess is till about September. That's when we'll have more final numbers for the year end that will close out. So our fiscal year end ends in June, but it takes 2 months for some accruals to roll in before we'll have some final numbers for you. And so unless requested sooner, it'll probably be about September. I'll come back before you and give a final review of where you guys ended up your fiscal year.
Will these outstanding accounts affect that end of the year stuff?
Yes, we will do a write-off, but these outstanding accounts right now won't really affect us in the current year. They'll hang out as a receivable still, but we won't actually write them off until they've actually closed their account and we've collected no payments for a year. So it's possible that next year, but again, it's dependent on people moving out and things like that, we'll immediately start going into a 6-month payment plan. And so if those start to fail, that's when we'll start to see something. But the volume that we're discussing is really quite immaterial in regards to the overall revenue for the power department. You're going to, again, be less than 1% on something like that.
What do we know what the average amount of those 900 accounts is? Is it a significant number? I mean, when we talk about them paying it back over a 6-month payment plan, are we talking they're going to have to be an extra $40, $50, $100 on their bill?
It really varies depending on, and I don't know if Rick knows offhand what the average utility bill generally looks like. And again, what it is payment plan on their entire bill. So not just the power side, it would be their power, water. And so it really varies depending on, where they live, the size of their home and all of that. But Rick, do you have a rough estimate or?
I don't have any specifics. Kerry didn't, he gave me that same 900, but that 900 also, keep in mind, I think includes the entire city. So that would be people behind on water south of the
Oh,
river. as
okay.
well. I think generally we have a larger portion of that, but there is going to be some that are kind of water only related. So we'd have to get more specifics from Kerry. I'm not sure what the typical one is.
So we have been offering the payment plan since the first part of April. And when I talked to Kerry and asked him if anybody was on that, he said that no, anybody who had requested the payment plan when he went over the terms with them had requested that they just went ahead and paid their balance in full at that time. But obviously everybody who's been in the past due scenario has not submitted a request for an extension, because otherwise I don't see that would be the case. So.
Do we charge any type of fees for that?
We are not charging any type of fee, and we're actually waiving the late fees and penalties as of right now, as a result of the financial impact that we feel our citizens are potentially experiencing right now.
So normally we would, but during this period, COVID time, we are not.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay. Kimberly, thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for letting us know and keeping us in tune on that. I don't know if you want to jump off. You don't have to.
I will. I'm going to say goodnight.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Kimberly.
Kimberly.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Kimberly.
Okay. Next is Rick's operations and generation reports.
Okay. We actually covered a fair amount of, so I was going to report just a little bit on the COVID. The department's continuing to do the social distancing, all the standard, hygiene practices, those kind of things. The one change that has happened is Jessica's, for the most part, back at the generation plant. It kind of got barricaded to where if somebody comes in the main door, they can't get around. We use some couches we have out there to funnel them and have a sneeze guard in front of Jessica. So try to keep her safe. And that's kind of been the case now. Pretty much all the city buildings are open in that fashion with some sort of mechanism to try to keep a distance between the employees and the outside customers. And we don't get a ton of people walking in, but if they do, we've tried to address some of that for safety reasons. We continue to keep, for the most part, our 2 crews of 2, and then they do work on common projects, but try to keep them together when they're in the bucket truck and those kind of things. As Kimberly said, on June 10th, which will be a week from tomorrow, will be our shut-off day. And again, as Ben said, utilities has made calls, sent letters. We're trying to do everything that we reasonably can to help people. If they'll call and make arrangements, we're willing to work with them. So if you have people come or ask you, just refer them to utilities and they can help them through that process. Any questions on the COVID side of things? For the most part, we've been able to function as pretty well normal. There's been maybe not quite as efficient in some areas, but overall it hasn't been significantly different, thank goodness. So.
Have we received any timelines at all about opening, or doesn't appear to me like it's going to be anytime soon?
That's kind of my take right now. I think we're going to stay in the yellow for a while. I know Roger, I believe, is planning on keeping the public meetings through June in this format. Again, we'll keep you posted as far as the July meeting, which would be on the 7th, of which format we do. Anything else on the COVID side?
Not for me. Let's just get it over with ASAP.
Yes, I agree. I think everybody's in that mode at this point. As Kimberly also indicated, the tentative budget goes to the council, and the public hearing for the budget, not just our budget, for the whole city, goes to council next Wednesday on the 10th. And then we'll have the public hearing, and then it'll be adopted on the 24th. So we don't have as big a projects planned for next year. They're more smaller, as you saw in the capital facilities plan that we provided last month to you. Also, she did, go ahead.
Real quick, sorry. So you don't anticipate any issues with the city council as far as the power department's concerned?
No, they've been very supportive, and really they haven't. I think the bigger concern is on the general funds. The departments that are funded through that. We're fortunate; we're tied, to the electric usage, and I don't really foresee a big impact on the usage levels. A little bit on the commercial, maybe. And the challenge to try to determine that is actually kind of the next item. For the month of May, as you were aware, last week was really hot for that time of year. And our system peak was 36.5 megawatts. A year ago in May, our peak was 20. So we were nearly double the peak load of what we were in May of 2019. And so I went in and checked, and our overall high temperature of 103 this year was 16 degrees higher than the high temperature of 2019 of 87. And the average temperature for May was 11 degrees warmer than 2019. So I think we're actually going to probably see an increase in usage and billings because of the heat. And so the COVID and growth get kind of difficult to see in the middle of that when we have such an extreme temperature change. Does that make sense? So it's, in fact, APPA has been asking, what are the impacts? And it's just been very difficult to really pin it down because we've got 2 or 3 dynamics going on at the same time. Any questions on that? For the generation side of things, we're scheduled to do our first run of the year on Thursday. Jake's been working on the swamp coolers to keep the generator building cooler and getting ready to go. So Thursday we were going to do as a test run, but as with the loads up as high, we need it anyway. So we'll start basically our run season this Thursday, and then they'll be run based on economics between gas prices and what we can buy power for at this time. So, and we'd anticipate that continuing through at least through the end of August, maybe first part of September, when our temperatures start to drop the other way. As far as projects go, I'm going to just show a few pictures. The Staley sub. Does everybody see that? Was that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. We actually it was interesting, the contractor actually hired an outfit to come down and do a drone flyover. And Steve, our IS department, they also did a drone flyover of it. So I thought some of these pictures were kind of cool. Just gives you a different perspective, obviously, than what you can see from the ground. That's what a substation looks like for a bird, I guess. And then the Parks Department now has completed the landscaping, put some desert plants, a drip system. You can see it looks like that's a popular turnaround spot. But I think it turned out really nice, and we appreciate the Parks Department helping us out there. And so the substation is basically fully complete. There were a few odds and ends that we had a couple equipment wiring issues that we had to address, and we've got all those taken care of. So it's basically done. It's been serving it during the peak times, a little over 4 megawatts of load. Any questions on the sub?
No, it looks great.
Then our other larger project, I think board member Spriggs can identify this location.
Yeah, that looks familiar.
This is actually taken, I think, right in front of your house. But the line last month was completed about up to this pole here, and we've completed the rest of the line and made the tie-in to the existing system over that ties into the Walmart commercial area. So just a few pictures, and again, eventually these poles, these old poles will come out. You can see the old pole. We've got it outside of the Spriggs's yard now, and eventually this will come out. And Mr. is it Tobler that owns the land down there? We worked with him and
Yeah.
got a good route through there. And it turns, and so instead of crossing Star Nursery, right now the old wires are still there. This span went from here all the way across Star Nursery. And if you ever walk in there right now, it's kind of spooky how close it was to their trellis. And so we've rerouted it around. And then this is the Mill Creek Trail parking lot area. And then we trenched it in from there and tied it into a piece of equipment here by the townhouses on the south side of 200. In fact, that tie-in was completed today by Tyler and his crew. So that's a nice sigh of relief there to get that completed. And I'm trying to figure out how to unshare. Can somebody help me with that?
Go down to the bottom of your screen where it says the share screen and click that one more time. It should unshare it.
But I can't get to that screen is my problem. There we go. Okay, we're back. Okay, any questions on those projects?
No.
So you'll see crews in the area. We call them taps off of the main line that we've got constructed now. And again, they can affect the reliability of that line if they're old and have problems. So they're going to be going along there and firming up, if you will, or making repairs or replacements as needed to make sure the taps are in a reliable state as well. So those two big projects, that's a lot to accomplish. And I guess we started the sub about October, so it's went really well. I guess I have a question for the board at this point. You know, we provided the capital facilities plan last month. I don't know if you have any questions, comments, concerns on that plan. I'll take that as good news.
No questions or comments, all look good.
Okay. Just to give you a quick update, we are working with it's a company called Utility Financial Services, or UFS, on the update to the impact fee and rate studies. We've given them the same capital facility plan that you had, and that's one of the missing pieces. We actually have a conference call with them tomorrow that we're hoping to get at least some preliminary indication of those results. And if things go well, I'm hoping maybe to have something to, at least in a preliminary state, be able to present to you next month. Certainly
Is
by
that the
August.
group that presented at the conference?
Yes, yes, it is. It's that same exact group up in Jackson that we participated in their presentation. So the lady that did that presentation, it's different, where it's actually her boss and a couple other people that are helping them. So, but yeah. So you'll be familiar, those that were able to attend that, at least a little bit of their philosophy of how they approach that. So I'm
That
hoping
was very informative.
Yes.
That presentation helped me understand it a lot better.
And we'll go through that, and if we need to, we can bring them out and actually have them do a presentation. If we have them come out, we'd probably do a combined council power board meeting, so we wouldn't have to have them come out twice. So, and then more on the other things that's been going on in the department. Dan Callahan is actually up in Salt Lake as we speak, and he takes his journeyman test tomorrow and Thursday. So we're keeping our fingers crossed and hoping he's able to get through that. And so I'm hoping by the end of the week we'll have another official lineman on board with us. So, and he's been a great addition to the department. We held a department safety meeting. It's on induction, and that's where can happen if you have two sets of wires running parallel to each other, that you can actually, like a transformer, cause a voltage to be on a line that's not energized. And so it was a safety meeting, just reminding them of the practices that they need to maintain while working in that environment. Ongoing streetlight repairs and maintenance. We average probably about 15 to 20 lights a month that we have to repair. So, and I think we have about 1,800, so it's not a huge amount, but we do try to stay on top of that. Jessica, anything on inventory you want to share with the board? Put you on the spot.
I know. Not really. Still doing good. Pretty soon I want to reorganize the whole warehouse, but we're going to do accounts soon, and hopefully, and then we can really buckle down and try to get everything organized how I want it organized in the shop. So that's about all I thought.
Yeah, Jessica's been doing a great job, and we appreciate that. And
thank you.
We're continue to make improvements there.
Will do.
Did take a drive on that new road today that connects with Main Street and goes behind on the north side of I-15.
Yeah.
Was there a lot of power lines and stuff along that route that needed to be done?
You know, actually, we only, for that particular part of that project, we only had to move some guys. We put if you go down through the cut before you get up to Green Springs, if you look up high to the right, there's we call it a span guy pole. That's the only one that we had to install on that project. So when we put the transmission line in, we had coordinated with at least a preliminary design of that road back 3-4 years ago. And so yeah, it's a really nice road. But it had minimal impact when they go to the full width that's planned for that road. There's a few distribution poles that we'll have to move. But for this particular phase, if you will, we didn't have to do much. So we've had to do more on Main Street than we did on that project by quite a bit. So
Should get the mayor to the golf course a lot quicker that way.
yeah, he'll like that. We've changed out a few transformers that were leaking oil. We've trying to work on, again, with Jessica and the rest of the crew's help, keep the shop cleaned and up to speed there. Mike's doing well on the GIS input. Spends the majority of his time on that. As I mentioned previously, Jake's finished up the odds and ends in the Staley substation and those, and has the gen plant ready to go for the summer run. We changed out the substation batteries in Buena Vista sub. Again, we switched all the load off of that substation for most of a day, changed the batteries out, and then put the load back on it and later that afternoon, and it went really well. That's for the most part as far as just general operations. Do you have any questions?
No questions. That was addressed earlier with the financial thing. Had a bunch of questions about the accounts past due, but she resolved those. So
yeah, and we'll obviously have a much better idea of what that's going to look like next week when we go through that shut off. I'm suspecting that June may be a higher number than we traditionally have, just because it'll be 3 months since that's occurred. So, and again, we're willing to work with people. They just need to contact us and make proper arrangements on that. Any other questions on the general operations generation report?
I don't have anything. Anybody else?
no.
I have one thing. We will have another board member next time. So
Cool. Gonna keep us in suspense, I guess.
Any idea, Mayor?
I guess you have to have it approved from council, right?
his last name is Superman.
Good.
I thought he was already on the board. I'm looking at a couple right here and Superwoman.
Okay, let's get back on task here then. UAMPS report is next.
Okay, I'll go through the main points on the projects for UAMPS. Just general items. The UAMPS meetings are being held like this, virtually, and for the most part, they've gone well that way. It just takes a little bit of time to get used to that. As of the UAMPS meetings on the 19th and 20th, they still hope to have the UAMPS member conference in Heber on August 16th through 19th. They did say they would make a final decision on that, whether to hold it in person or do a virtual one within the first couple of weeks of June. I haven't heard anything, so we'll keep you posted on that. As far as I think they'll be doing something at a minimum. If it could go as a virtual presentation, which is what APPA has done with their conference that'll happen next week. One of the other things that UAMPS has coordinated, it'll be ourselves, Mount Pleasant, and Brigham City through, it's called Hometown Connection, which is a partner with APPA to develop a strategic plan for the department. And so we'll keep you posted on that. That just got approved at the last month's meeting, and they'll be sending that out shortly. On the Central St. George project, which is the local transmission to Washington County, I was able to update our switching procedures based on the new configuration at Staley and the changes that were made out in the Purgatory area. So that's all been turned in. It's one of those things we hope we don't ever have to use, but it's good to have a good starting point. And if something happens unexpected, that we can respond a little quicker on getting power back on. I think we talked about it a little bit at the last county-wide utility meeting. We had some concerns with Rocky Mountain Power's planning for a transformer addition to the St. George sub, trying to get them to move that up from 2028. UAMPS has sent a letter. We haven't got an official response back, but at least they know that we're pushing for that and trying to get them to look at that. We have had some meetings on some interim relay settings that will buy us a little bit of time until that transformer comes in. So we're working on that. There's some right-of-way issues. We're working with Hurricane out on the Sand Hollow Road, as well as the new development on Country Way off of Washington Dam Road. So nothing that really needs to come to the power board, but just make you aware there are ongoing issues there on a few things, nothing too major. On the Payson project, they did complete their, and I think I reported last month that they completed their major overhaul in April. The unit's been used a little sporadically in May, except for last week when the temperatures went up. And when it has run, it's been running well, and they feel like they've actually been able to improve efficiency with the work that they did. And the report I got this morning that they emailed out was they were getting about 2 megawatts more net out of the plant than they were previously. So not a huge amount, about a 2% increase, but nonetheless, it shows that they did a good job on that. So it's up and running, ready to go, and as long as the temperatures stay up, and it'll be running pretty much on a daily basis. The Bayeux heat recovery plant that's up by Bayeux at the Kern River gas compressor station, it didn't run much in May because with the COVID and all the energy things that were going on, they didn't run their gas compressors. And so that's the heat source for that plant. So if the gas compressors don't run, we don't have any heat to run the generator, but it's back up and going. And in fact, the last couple of days, it's been a little higher than what we typically get out of it. So that was good to see that one come back. The one downside on that project is when they renewed the insurance on it, because of all the, not necessarily that that's a high fire risk, it's just the utility in general is getting pressure on their insurance rates going up because of all the claims that's happened in California and elsewhere. And so we had a significant insurance increase on that particular project. It's one of those things, there's not a whole lot we can do about it. I think they sent it out to like 20 companies, and they only got responses from, I think it was like 4, because a lot of people aren't writing utility insurance right now because of those claims. UAMPS on various projects have had a consultant come in and give they call it a plant life report. They just go in and look at the plant and make recommendations on maybe spares or things like that. On the Bayeux project, they only had one recommendation, would be to purchase a spare bearing assembly for the turbine. And so UAMPS is looking into what those costs would be and figuring out how to maybe incorporate that into the budget in the next year or so. And that would just be available in case that bearing were to fail. Right now, the whole plant would be shut down. If you have a spare on hand, it could be put back in service much quicker than tracking that down. Excuse me. For the carbon-free power project, the current funding for the budget that we have now is they anticipate running out in July. So when we get to that end of that current funding, we're going to have to, obviously, if we're going to proceed, we're going to have to provide more funding on that. They plan on providing, they called it a packet, if you will, at the June meetings, that we could start educating and bringing the power board, city councils up to speed on what that next step is going to look like. And we'll either probably have UAMPS representatives come make presentations, and or they're planning on doing some virtual town hall meetings as well that would kind of outline the next steps, the financial commitments, impacts, and those kind of things. We actually have a meeting, an interim project meeting on that tomorrow morning to discuss the Department of Energy participation. There may be some shifts in that a little bit, I think in a positive way from what I've understood so far, but nonetheless, it might be a little different than what we've had before. So again, I don't have much to report on that other than we've got that meeting tomorrow, and we'll keep you posted. And they continue to work on subscription, the agreements on the construction, and with NewScale as well. And they do plan on rescheduling the NewScale visit, but that's just put on hold indefinitely, obviously until we figure out the COVID thing. Any questions on that particular project?
You know if they have a YouTube video or anything of that plant tour that we can look at, or?
I think we can find some that we can get sent out. I'm just making a note here. I think I can find some that kind of at least explains the basics of, you know, how it's going to operate and those kind of things. So, yeah, I think we can find something. It won't be quite as good as the tour, but it'll give you something to review. Anything else on that?
Nope.
So we'll track those down and try to get those links set out. I mean, you can go to the NewScale, I think it's newscale.com, and they do have some stuff in there as well.
Okay, thank you.
As far as their timeline, are they all on track as far as what they're planning?
I think it's actually, I think we've talked about 2026 or so. I think it'll probably be pushed out just a little further. Probably more on the 28 range is what I think is what they're saying now. And again, that's part of what should be coming up, is what they're seeing as the next phases and new timelines and those kind of things. So I think I reported last month that we did decide on to go with the dry cooling. So it greatly reduces the amount of water ice that has to be obtained for that project. So, and because of that, it was actually shown to be the most cost effective as well. And probably the most environmentally acceptable approach is, you know, because of the water reduction, it's dramatically less than wet cooling. The Government and Public Affairs Project with UAMPS, they continually monitor legislation. You may or may not have noticed that the House passed I think it's the fourth, whatever the latest relief bill for the COVID. And it did have a clause in there that no shutoffs for 6 months, but it hasn't even been brought up at the Senate yet. So we're just kind of keeping an eye on that. For the pool, natural gas summer power pricing, right now it's looking favorable. The month of May, even when the loads came up, the prices increased some, but they weren't dramatic, and usually it was only for 2 or 3 hours in a day. So it wasn't anything to be alarmed at or anything out of the ordinary when loads go up like that. And we did start yesterday taking the first part of our summer product. For the month of June, we bought an extra 2 megawatts for the high load hours, which is 8 o'clock in the morning till 11 at night. And so we'll have 2 additional megawatts in June, 4.5 in July, and 3.5 in August. So they're just a short-term power contract on those. The wind projects, the Horse Butte project, they did that life optimization report similar to the Bayeux. And again, the main thing they recommended there, they were very complimentary of how the UAMP staff is running the facility. But they did recommend having spare sets of blades, a spare generator, and a spare gearbox. Again, just if there is an event, then it can be repaired much quicker than waiting. Capacity factor for Horse Butte was 33%, which is actually pretty good. And Pleasant Valley, which is a power purchase contract, its capacity factor was 31%, which is really good for Pleasant Valley. It's usually down in the low 20s. So we did get a little bit more wind out of both of those projects than we typically do. And then the last thing for UAMPS, and I don't have any information yet, is there's a potential solar project that's being built out by Tooele. And it's by the same developer that did the one that's down on the reservation that we signed up for 1 megawatt. So we'll keep you posted on that and see how that looks, if it's something we want to pursue. And that's my UAMPS report, unless you have any questions. And again, hopefully next month we'll have more information on the carbon-free project, as well as the rate study and impact fee study. So.
Okay. Any questions for Rick?
I did find a number of videos on the YouTube on NewScale, so thank you.
Okay. And I'll look through and see if I can find some others that they've sent, but they have some pretty, and they have some that have animations that show how they will refuel and those kind of things as well. So.
Okay. Is there anything else that needs to be brought up, or?
Just a quick question, Rick. What's the time frame on the Main Street project again?
The road project?
Yes.
Mike reported at staff meeting yesterday that they're shooting for like the 2nd week in July to have it done.
Okay.
I don't know if you've been up around. You can get around now on 4th North and get under the freeway.
Oh.
So
okay.
from 4th North up to Buena Vista, underneath that underpass, or is it an overpass? Overpass. That's been now asphalted, and you can get around there.
Very good.
And their target is early July is what they're hoping for.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, if there's nothing else, we can have a motion for an adjourn.
I'll move that we adjourn till next month.
I'll second it.
Harold first and Randy second. Randy, do you want to start?
Meyer, aye.
Nelson, I.
Spriggs, aye.
Dinsmore, aye. Okay, till next month, July 7th.
July 7th. And again, we'll keep you posted on what format it will be.
Okay,
Very good.
I'd like to make a suggestion tonight, request the grand staircase at Escalante in your background next time.
What was that?
I'd like to see the grand staircase Escalante in his background next time.
Oh, okay, okay.
Talking to Michael.
no, I stay with St. George, but
It's great. See you guys.
hey,
Thanks, guys.
thank you, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.